te iti matva bhajante mam buddha bhava samanvitaha machita madgata prana bodhayanta parasparam katayantascha mam nityam tushyanti cha ramanti cha tesham satata yuktanam bhajatam priti purvakam dadami buddhi yogam tam yena mam upayanti te tesham yevanukam partam aham ajnanajam tamaha nashayami atma bhavasto jnana dipena bhashvata mat karma krin mat paramo mat bhakta sangha varjitaha nirvaira sarva bhuteshu yasa mameti pandava yetu sarvani karmani mai sanyasya mat paraha ananyenaiva yogena mam dhyayanta upasate teshamaham samhudarta mrityu samsara sagarat bhavamina chirat partha maya veshita chetasham mayeva mana adatsva mayi buddhim niveshaya nivashishyashi mayeva ata urdvam na samshayaha. Just fix your mind upon me, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Engage all your intelligence in me. Thus you will live in me always, without a doubt. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki, Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna. Let's continue our discussion. Chapter 12. Bhakti Yoga. The central point of entire Bhagavad Gita. So in the first 6 chapters, we saw how different forms of yoga. We have Jnana Yoga, we have Karma Yoga, we have Ashtanga Yoga. How all of them lead to Bhakti. So the first 6 chapters, primarily, they dealt with Karma Yoga, different forms of Karma Yoga, and how practicing those different steps in Karma Yoga actually eventually leads us to the path of Bhakti. The middle 6 chapters, which is chapter 7 to 12, it talks about Bhakti Yoga itself, and the remaining section of Gita, especially chapter 13 to 17, it's going to talk about how Jnana Yoga is going to lead to Bhakti Yoga. Okay, so the first 6 chapters talk about how Karma Yoga leads to Bhakti Yoga. Chapters 13 to 17 speaks about how Jnana Yoga leads to Bhakti Yoga. The mid 6 chapters, chapter 7 to 12, it talks about Bhakti Yoga itself and what are the different levels or different stages in Bhakti Yoga. This is this is the smallest chapter. Very merciful chapter. Only 18 pages. But I should warn you, verse 12, that is the most complicated of the 700 verses of Bhagavad Gita. So the more you read, more you'll get confused. Because whatever our understanding which we have established, that particular verse will actually confuse us more. So the approach we are going to take, how many of you have read this 12th chapter, or at least a little bit? Yeah. How many of you are with me when I said it's a bit complicated? So the way how it's going to work is, there are many ways how you can interpret this verse and get confused. I'm not going to touch on any of that. We are going to stick to how Srila Prabhupada explains. I'm quoting from different acharyas. We are going to stick to that. So you hear it, go home, read this verse again, get confused and come back to me with questions. So that's the approach we are going to take. That's just for this particular verse. Because there are only 20 verses in this chapter, I thought maybe we can quickly go through most of the verses, reading one by one. Now, this is 12th chapter. When we finish this chapter, we'll have only another 200 more pages. Ooh. So after this chapter, it'll be mostly like a downhill ride, so we can quickly finish them. Now, 6 more weeks to go. The connection between the previous chapter and this one. So in 11th chapter, if you actually see, in fact, for that matter, even 10th chapter, Krishna was listing all his opulences, impersonal opulences. Okay, he says, among the stars, I'm the moon. Among immovable objects, he says, I'm Himalayas, so on and so forth. He is telling about his potency. He is telling about the most defining principle or quality in anything which is very brilliant in this world comes from him. So it was more an impersonal aspect of him. So he says, so that's how he explains in 10th chapter, opulence of the absolute, as well as in the previous chapter also when we saw the Vishwarupa Darshana Yoga. We also saw about Kalarupa, and we also saw how Prabhupada nicely establishes, even though there are different forms of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, or rather different aspects of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. There is Brahman, there is Paramatma, there is Bhagavan aspect, as well as this material manifestation. Still, it's the two-handed Shyamasundar form, two-handed Shri Shri Radha Gopinath form. That's the topmost. And to be able to see that, all that is actually required is simply to do devotional service. So simply if we do devotional service in whatever way, that will qualify us to actually come face to face with the Supreme Lord and to see him face to face. So that's how Prabhupada established the previous chapter. Now in this particular chapter, if you see, Arjuna opens his question by asking, you have explained to me about all this. In 9th chapter, Krishna has explained in detail about Bhakti Yoga, most confidential knowledge, pure devotional service. And he also spoke about his opulences in the previous 2 chapters. So Arjuna is asking here, you explained to me about the personal form, you explained to me about the impersonal aspect of you. Between the two, which is better, which is easier, which is the path that you recommend yourself? Now, in asking that question, first of all, Arjuna wants to unambiguously establish for eternity worshipping the personal form of the Supreme Lord. That is the topmost form of worship. Any form of worship, that is the topmost. And second, Arjuna also wants to establish his own position as a devotee. When you read 12th chapter, one thing, especially the midsection, 8 to 12, one thing that you can't help but think is, which category do I fall under? How many of you had that thought? Little bit? Yeah. And interestingly, if you analyze, you will see we are a bit of everything. We are neither in pure devotional platform, nor in a platform of just to do Nishkama Karma Yoga. We are a bit of everything. So we can discuss that when we go to that section. So let's start with this first section. This chapter has got only 3 sections mainly. So verse 1 to 7, 8 to 12, and 13 to 20. 1 to 7, Krishna will establish worshipping his personal form. That is topmost, that is superior to worshipping his impersonal aspect. So that's the first thing which Krishna would establish there in verse 1 to 7. So personal form is superior. To worshipping the impersonal aspect, which is Brahman. Verse 8 to 12, Krishna will speak about different stages one can practice bhakti. It says progressive stages in the practice of bhakti, slightly misleading the term because it's a descending progression, actually. So the topmost is given in verse 8, and then it goes down, one below, one below, one below. So when we say progressive stages, we usually use it in a positive term, going high, but it's actually in a reverse order, actually. And 13 to 20, Krishna speaks about 35 transcendental qualities, which he likes to see in the devotees, which endears one devotee more close to him. So Krishna will speak about 35 different qualities. Prabhupada in the purports, he gives beautiful explanation for each one of them. What do each one of those qualities mean? How we can apply in our day-to-day life as devotees. But one thing towards the end of the chapter, Prabhupada clearly says, we don't need to make any extraneous endeavor. Extraneous means we are chanting Hare Krishna, following four regulated principle, doing devotional service. Prabhupada says if we simply stick to this process, we will come to actually accrue these qualities slowly ourselves. We don't need to make any extra endeavor. So there is no extra endeavor required. But for us to actually really understand what is it that Krishna likes to see in us, it's good. And the more we hear about it, more we'll at least start to mechanically imitate them. And Prabhupada says imitation is the best form of flattery. So if you want to actually really acquire something, start to imitate. Over a period of time, we'll actually get it. So imitation of spiritual qualities is good. Not in terms of sahaja, not in going to extreme and putting up this facade, not in that sense. But if Krishna says, it would be good if we can be equanimous and in some testing circumstance, we can at least remember that instruction and say like, all right, this is a difficult circumstance. Let me think how much I can actually cope up. Every time you get a headache, you think, when I am about to die, there are 1,000 scorpions that's going to prick me at the same point, same time. Let me go through a sample of that now. Let me see how much I can actually think. So any difficulties, the devotees are very experts in connecting it with Krishna. So that's why external circumstance doesn't matter much for devotees. So that itself is a quality. We can see mana apamanayoho. Krishna says that in the time of honor and dishonor, how much are we able to stay stable? That's one of the defining qualities of a devotee. So that's how Krishna is going to wind up this chapter. So first verse, as I said, Arjuna asked this question, which is more superior. Krishna will waste no time, and he'll immediately establish the supremacy of the personal form. So that's the first question Arjuna asks. Let's go to second verse. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, those who fix their minds on my personal form and are always engaged in worshipping me with great and transcendental faith are considered by me to be most perfect. Now, when I say there are 35 qualities, naturally one question that may come is there any hierarchy in that qualities? Is there anything that is the topmost of all? Yes, there is. Shraddha, faith. And Krishna in the second verse itself, he touches on that. He will touch on it later in the chapter. But Shraddha, or faith. Faith doesn't mean blind faith, not based on our sentiment, but faith means we go by Guru, Sadhu and Shastra. And then we put those knowledge, whatever knowledge we gain from each of these three sources, we put that into practice and we experience it slowly. And when we experience a certain transformation in us, that deepens our faith more. So there is a process that's actually involved in deepening this faith. That's the faith which Krishna is speaking about. Educated faith, informed faith, faith in knowledge. So that is the faith which Krishna is speaking about here. So Krishna says, those who fix their minds on my personal form, they are considered by me to be the most perfect. We all know this story. In Krishna book, there is this fruit vendor lady. She comes, how many of you know that story? Okay, for those of you who don't, quickly. So there is a fruit vending lady who comes to sell a basket of fruits. Baby Krishna has always seen how barter system works. So whenever the fruit vending lady comes, Mother Yashoda will come, exchange with her some grains or milk, and in return she would get the fruits. So one day when Baby Krishna says, usually little kids, they try to imitate the parents. So immediately he goes, picks up a handful of grain, but by the time he walks out to the door, he already spilled almost everything. There were only few grains that were left. He couldn't even hold them properly. But then when he goes in front of the fruit vending lady, he starts to cry because he hasn't got much. He himself figured out by then. So, but the fruit vending lady, being so charmed, so enchanted by this beautiful form of Krishna, she says, it's okay, you come, sit on my lap. You just call me mother just once, that's enough. I'll give you everything. So then, for him, what's the big deal? He just calls her Maya once. She gets so enchanted, oh, this beautiful boy, she doesn't know he's Supreme Lord. He called me as mother, so what she does is, she packs up all his arms everywhere, how much ever fruits she can. Baby Krishna was happy, she goes in. He goes inside. So now if you read Krishna book, it's actually given, as soon as she removes all the fruits from her basket, immediately it got filled with jewels, stones, all the valuables. Our biggest problem is we always learn only one half of the story and don't know the moral of the story. Many stories I can tell you, you'll be like, oh, really? So now what happens is, we usually, in one sense, it looks like karma kanda. Somebody came and offered a service to Krishna. Krishna immediately gave wealth. It looks like karma kanda. But then why does it appear in Srimad Bhagavatam? Is it so great? Some fruit vending lady. That story I can imitate even in day-to-day lives now. Some same fruit vending lady can win a lotto and get perhaps the same amount of wealth. That's not really the moral of the story. What happens is, as soon as baby Krishna goes in, immediately this fruit vending lady picks up the basket, runs to the forest, dumps all the jewels, picks up more fruits, comes back again to the same street to sell more fruits. Because for her, dealing with that personal form of Krishna, that is the topmost wealth. You will see in these verses, Krishna actually uses the term Dhananjaya for Arjuna. Jaya means victorious, Dana means wealth, one who has conquered wealth. Acharyas have given commentaries on the purport of this name. Arjuna, yes, it is true, on one level he has conquered all the wealth from different kings. However, in this particular context, in 12th chapter, when Krishna calls him as Dhananjaya, it means he who conquered Krishna, the greatest wealth, by his love and devotion. That's why in this particular chapter, when Krishna addresses him as Dhananjaya, it means he who has conquered Krishna by his wealth of love, wealth of devotion. So that's what it means. Okay, so Krishna in second verse, he immediately establishes worship of the personal form. That is the topmost. There is nothing greater than that. Now, immediately, Krishna will then contrast what process one has to follow in order to go through worshipping impersonal form in order to attain the same aspect. If you remember, in one of the earlier chapters, second chapters, we discussed how in spirituality there are two different types. One is the worship of the personal form, and the second is impersonal. And we also saw in impersonal form there are two. One is Brahmavad and Mayavad. Brahmavad, they are innocent. Mayavad is also maybe innocent, but the philosophy isn't. Okay, so Brahmavad means one who thinks the Brahman effulgence or the glow, the light that comes out of Krishna's body, they take that to be the supreme. So that's Brahmavada. Whereas those who worship personal form, they are called Vaishnavas. So now the comparison is primarily between these two. Mayavadis, technically they don't count as devotees. So the comparison now that's actually given is between these two. So Krishna in second verse, he establishes this is supreme because they worship the personal form. However, those who worship through the Brahman, they also can go to Krishna, but the process is troublesome. So Krishna in third and fourth verse, he immediately contrasts by saying it's very, very difficult. On one hand, if you remember 9th chapter, Patram Pushpam Phalam Toyam. Just give flower, water, fruit, eat prasad, come and sleep in class, anything is fine. It's still devotional service. Now, in contrast to that, if you read verse 3rd and 4th, the translation. But those who fully worship the unmanifested, that which lies beyond the perception of the senses, the all-pervading, inconceivable, unchanging, fixed and unmovable, the impersonal conception of the absolute truth, by controlling this is the process, by controlling the various senses and being equally disposed to everyone, such persons engaged in the welfare of all at last achieve me. So Krishna is now giving the qualification that's required for somebody to follow this process of impersonal worship and still come to Krishna. Now, Krishna will immediately say in 5th verse, he'll discourage immediately. As soon as he tells about the qualification that takes to follow this impersonal path, Krishna will immediately say it is very difficult. Krishna uses two words in 5th verse, if you see. For those whose minds are attached to the unmanifested, here unmanifested means the Brahman effulgence. Impersonal feature of the Supreme, advancement is very troublesome. So Krishna himself is saying it's troublesome. It is a difficult path, Krishna is saying. To make progress in that discipline is always difficult. Again, Krishna is emphasizing. If you see the Sanskrit, klesha also means trouble. Adhyatmik, Adi Bhautik, Adi Daivik klesha, we always call. And then in the third verse, if you see, third line rather, it says dukam, dukalayam. That's also troublesome. So Krishna is using the word trouble twice to actually say, forget it, it's very troublesome process. Don't go that side. So Krishna is, even though he's saying there is a potential for you to follow that path also and come to me, it's going to be very long-winded. Second, Bhakti Yoga process is very, very easy, difficult, quick. Krishna has also said that before. Anybody can do. We even saw how even a little baby in the mother's womb, even the baby can do. When the mother eats prasad, mother hears the holy name, mother goes to temple, baby also takes the same amount of credit. So it's very, very easy. Whereas this whole process, Krishna uses klesha, Krishna uses dukam. Two words Krishna uses in 5th verse, if you see, both meaning trouble. And Krishna himself is discouraging, don't even go that side. Okay. Then Krishna is going to wind up this chapter by again contrasting with how easy it is to follow this personal path in 6 and 7. So Krishna started in second verse by saying this process is very easy. Third and fourth, he actually said he gave the qualification how to follow the impersonal path. Fifth verse, Krishna also said how troublesome by using the word trouble twice. Now 6 and 7, again Krishna is going to come and say, actually it's very easy, just to stick to this. So Krishna is going to give his verdict. 6 and 7, but those who worship me, giving up all their activities unto me, and being devoted to me without deviation, engaged in devotional service and always meditating upon me, having fixed their minds upon me, O son of Pritha, for them I am the swift deliverer from the ocean of death. Welcome to material world. It's called ocean of death. So Krishna is saying something interesting here. He's saying in Brahmavada, or the impersonal form of worship, if you actually take, it's very, very troublesome. It's difficult because if you read all the qualification, the most defining aspect of the qualification is equanimity. Equanimity. You have to be very level-headed. You should be able to see everything same. Honor, dishonor, or friend, enemy, like, dislike, everything for you has to be same. It's like almost, you can say it's qualifying them to come to the level of Brahman. So that's the qualification. And Krishna is saying, being in this body, which means body is going to go through constant motion of pain and pleasure. Body is going to go through pleasure and pain at different point of time. So on one hand, you are in a state wherein it is going through this sinusoidal curve. How are you actually going to maintain that level-headedness? So Krishna is saying, forget it. That's why he says, for embodied, this process of worshipping unmanifested form is very, very difficult. On the other hand, Krishna is saying, one who follows this personal path, Krishna is saying, it's not just you who's going to try. Krishna is saying, it's a two-way path. I am the swift deliverer, Krishna himself is saying. Which means, Krishna is saying, these are the rules and regulations which I'm giving you in the scriptures. These are the instructions I'm giving you by means of different association. These are the scriptural injunctions that I've actually given. You take it up, you follow, try your best. You do what you can, and I will do what you can't. Krishna himself said, Ananyas Chintayanto Mam. Giriraj Maharaj was reading one of his old transcripts of the lectures actually he has given earlier. He says, during his initiation lecture, he wrote to Prabhupada, Prabhupada, I'm very, very unqualified. And then Prabhupada quoted this verse by saying, Krishna will carry what you lack and he'll preserve what you have. And Maharaj was saying it took him almost like 25, 30 years after to really understand the real purport of that verse. Now when Krishna says, I will carry what you lack, it means Maharaj is giving his realization that when we are initiated, when we are following this process of Krishna consciousness, we chant 16 rounds. We follow 4 regulative principles. We do devotional service. But are we perfect? Definitely not. When was the day when you finished your rounds, put your bead back and you said like, yep, I have chanted all those 1728 mantras attentively. Never. Take it from me, it will never happen. It's not possible at all. So then, if we know we are actually losing something, what's the point in aiming for it? Are we fighting just a losing battle? If the result is very, very clear, it's like, sometimes, I don't know if you played any games. When you know you are actually going to lose, you actually lose inspiration also to fight. Now, knowing very well how inattentive we are in our chanting, how inattentive we are in our service, should we just give it up, thinking, what's the point? Krishna, to give us that inspiration, Krishna is actually saying, no, you try from your side. You can't chant 1728 mantras properly, no problem. If you hear Japa lectures of Burujan Prabhu, he says, just the last mantra of every round. When you come to the last mantra, just stop and tell to yourself, okay, one mantra, one round, I'll chant attentively. And he says, just chant that one mantra properly. It's a start. Trust me, it's a very, very powerful technique. Try, you will see the difference. You will consciously move. Otherwise, when you chant, you keep on chanting, and then suddenly you will see, first 2 rounds, it will go very slow. After 8, our hands have got siddhi. I don't know how many beats our hands skip. Suddenly from 9, see, realize knowledge. From 9, suddenly you look at it, it's 15. I'm like, what did I do? If you really want to kill time, chant. Seriously, I'm telling you. We really don't know what's really happening. That's why in ashram we actually say, whenever you chant, please time your rounds. We time our rounds. At least, that will give some indication. If you had finished a round in 3 minutes, you really have a problem. You really have to take slowly, and you have to really feel the beats, and then you have to go slowly. We can cheat ourselves very, very quickly. So it's not Krishna's mercy if we finish a round soon, okay? So it's really siddhi of our hands. It will skip beats very, very quick. But if we keep some sort of checks and balances in place, if we try, all right, I can't really monitor each and every round, all right. Sometimes you can record your rounds. We do that in the temple. We record our rounds, give it to the other person, at least the time during the recording. If you may think, I will imitate, try imitating. It's not easy to even imitate one round. You will see the power of mind, how quickly it goes. You will hear all mumbling of different words also. You think? So once I remember, one of my god sisters, she recorded a round, showed it to my Guru Maharaj, and then my Guru Maharaj said, chant. And then she was chanting, and Guru Maharaj said, I didn't give you that mantra. It's very hard. You just skip one Hare happily, one Rama here happily. We don't even realize that. So this is our position, and no matter how hard we try, it's very, very difficult. What are we going to do? Krishna is giving us hope here in verse 6 and 7. Krishna is saying, you try to do whatever, how much ever best you can. So Giriraj Maharaj, he says, when he read this verse, if I will carry what you lack and I'll preserve what you have, it means whatever devotional service, whatever chanting, whatever shukriti we are accruing, by following this process of Bhakti Yoga, Krishna will protect it. But those that for which we are actually struggling, Krishna is saying, don't worry, I will carry. You just continue doing it. That's what Krishna means there. So Krishna, when he says, I'm the swift deliverer, Krishna is saying it's a personal, two-way approach. It's a reciprocal relationship. Remember, Krishna is impartially partial. As long as we are sincere in our endeavor, as long as we try our best to chant, yes, we may not be able to chant everything, but let us try. That sincerity will actually evoke mercy of Krishna. Prabhupada says that, Prabhupada quotes this English saying also, God helps those who help themselves. Prabhupada says that on a few occasions. If you actually hear the conversations, you will see. Even in one of the purports, Prabhupada writes that. So it's important that we don't lose hope. It's important that we don't feel lonely. That's very, very important. It's important that we understand this process is simply about developing that personal connection with the Supreme Lord. The whole pinnacle of deity worship is to come to the platform that I'm dealing with the person. Okay, so the topmost pujari means whoever who can develop that personal relationship. Now, that doesn't mean you have to be second initiated. You can come here, have that personal relationship with Krishna. That's the end game of deity worship. To come to this unflinching conclusion, unflinching faith, to develop that deep level of realization that he is a person. I'm dealing with the person. That's the whole point of deity worship. Holy name, our whole process of Vaishnavism. Okay, so it's important that we understand. And Krishna in 6 and 7, he's saying, simply you follow this process, I myself will come and I will quickly, I become the deliverer. So Krishna is saying, this is what I'm going to chip in. Now you try your best. And that how much is best, that varies from individual to individual. But to our capacity, we should try. My Guru Maharaj says that in some instances we may think, that devotee is not doing such a great service. Why can't that devotee be like me? My Guru Maharaj says that capacity varies. If we really want to challenge that level of pride, he says, why do we compare with other devotees? Compare ourselves with the Goswamis. 22 hours they will write, and then suddenly the pen will drop and they'll think, what's wrong with me? Or 36 hours they'll write and suddenly it'll drop, and then they'll realize, all right, I didn't eat and I didn't sleep for 36 hours. So if we really want to challenge ourselves, we can actually follow that. Once one devotee went to Prabhupada and he said, Prabhupada, I have this anger problem. No matter what, I'm very, very short-tempered, I'm getting very easily provoked. Prabhupada says, go and take darshan of Narasimhadev. If you look at him, slowly you will understand, looking at his anger, our anger will actually pale into oblivion. We can try it. Prabhupada says that. If any of you have that anger problem, if you know of any devotees, give him or her Narasimhadev picture. So, for every problem we face, for every obstacle we face in Bhakti Yoga, in our practicing of Bhakti Yoga, there is a solution that's given. Like Mahanidhi Maharaj, he says, for 10 offenses of holy name, he gives 10 defenses for holy name also. How we can get rid of each one of the offenses. Okay, so the support system is there, material is there, devotee association is there. We just need to come and take the mercy from whatever Krishna actually gives, and we will see Krishna is actually guiding us in our baby step towards Him. Okay, so that's what Krishna says in verse 6 and 7. Now that moves us to the next section, section 8 to 12, the different progressive stages of devotional service. Now, verse 8. It's a beautiful verse. That's the verse we recite. Mayi eva manadatsva, mayi buddhim niveshayah, nivashishyashi mayeva, atav urdvam na samshayah. 12.8 is the topmost stage of practicing Bhakti Yoga, which is fixing our mind on Krishna. So that's the topmost stage. Now, when we come to Krishna consciousness, it's very easy to give up all external disturbances. No meat eating, no intoxication, no gambling, no illicit sex. Initially, we may struggle over a period of time, and then we'll give up easily. Simply by taking prasad, simply by chanting, simply by following this process, slowly we will see, even without us knowing, we would have given up all of them. How many of you have that experience? I think it works the same for all of us. Because the moment we know consciously we are going to give up, we wouldn't have practiced it. Okay? We would have made life difficult, but it just happened very seamlessly. We just forgot about our material desires. That's how this process works. So the topmost stage which Krishna says in Bhakti Yoga is fixing one's mind. Just like in any relationship, there is a boy and a girl. How chaste each one is actually to the relationship, that's what is going to define. Okay, so mentally, if they think of someone else, it means the relationship is not so chaste. You understand? Same thing happens even with Bhakti. There is Bhakta, and there is Bhagavan, and there is Bhakti. So the Bhakti has to be undeviated, unmotivated, and it has to be with single-pointed focus of attention towards Krishna. That is topmost. That's what Krishna says in 12.8. Now, who is in that platform? None of us are. Only pure devotees are in that platform. So Krishna says, if you can't fix your mind like that, spontaneously, at least try to do by following the principles of sadhana bhakti. Bhakti yoga, technically, sadhana bhakti. Again, this is the first stage. If you can't aim for that, at least Krishna says, if you see, you will see how magnanimous Krishna is. You will see how encompassing, how accommodative Krishna is. Krishna is not saying, either you are a pure devotee or you are a demon. Okay, usually we tend to take that extreme approach when we come to Krishna consciousness based on our level of maturity at that point. This is devotee and that is demon. That's how we think. But as we progress, we actually understand demons are not outside, they are inside us. we'll realize that. But the point is, in 12.8, Krishna is saying that is the topmost. As I said, this is a reverse ladder. Now, the way how you can envisage this is, Chaitanya Chandra Prabhu gives a beautiful analogy. Imagine this is a deep, dark well, and we are here, and Krishna is here. So first, Krishna is giving rope only till this point. Please climb up. Now, only those in 12.8 can climb up. We can't. We are here. So then Krishna lowers the rope even more, and he says, all right, you can't do that, at least do this. Okay? Then we say, Krishna, it's again too difficult. I was reading Gaur Govinda Maharaj's biography. There was one instance, this is in late 80s. There were many sannyasis in our movement, and then there were some difficulty at that point of time. So one person who wanted to take sannyas, he was asking Gaur Govinda Maharaj, what is the bare minimum qualification to take sannyas? So then Maharaj says, well, when you chant Hare Krishna, only thought you should have in your mind is Radha Krishna. That's it. Then this devotee actually tells to Maharaj, Maharaj, let me clarify, I'm asking bare minimum qualification. Maharaj says, that's the bare minimum qualification to take sannyas. So it's not easy to actually take sannyas. It's very, very high level. So here, to be able to be in stage 8 is, where 12.8 is, it's very difficult. So Krishna is saying, all right, if you can't do, at least to do level of sadhana bhakti. Now, somebody may say, I can't really do sadhana bhakti. It's just way too complicated for me. Now, if you read the purport in 12.9, Prabhupada explains what are the different principles. Prabhupada says waking up early in the morning, doing deity worship, chanting Hare Krishna and everything. So they are the principles, not just the 4 regulative principles. All the items of devotional service, whatever that we feel comfortable with, we can do. So that's 12.9. If somebody says, nah, even 12.9 is difficult, then Krishna says, work for me. So the rope is going even low. Now, if you read 12.10 purport, if you remember the first 6 chapters of Bhagavad Gita, we discussed about different aspects of Karma Yoga. There's Nishkama Karma Yoga, Sakama Karma Yoga, we saw, and then there is Jnana Yoga, we saw Ashtanga Yoga, and then finally we came to Bhakti Yoga. So here, technically working for me is to be involved in some direct devotional service. Okay, coming to temple, could be preaching, could be cooking prasad, something where you can directly connect. So that's the 12.10 platform. You can see, we may think, where do we really stand in this whole realm of Krishna consciousness? You can see how detailed Krishna is going. And you can see how encompassing Krishna is also. He is not rejecting anyone. 12.10. So if somebody says, it's very difficult, Krishna, I can't even do that. If you read 12.11, you will understand how merciful Krishna is, how merciful Prabhupada is, if you read. Now 12.11, interestingly, now 12.10 technically comes under Karma Yoga. They are all different realms of Bhakti Yoga, but for analysis I'm saying, this is simply working for him. Technically it means like, okay, you do the work, whatever that Krishna wants, Nishkama Karma Yoga, I just offer. So that is 12.10. Now 12.11, if you see, Krishna says, all right, you can't fix your mind on me, you can't really follow the principles of sadhana bhakti, you can't work for me. Whatever I ask you to do, you can't do. Fine. What you do whatever work you are currently doing, just give up the results. Now you have to see how accommodative Krishna is. Krishna is not saying, give the results to me. Krishna is not saying. Then it becomes Bhakti Yoga. Technically, 12.11 doesn't even come under transcendental path at all. Now we may think, especially those who are preaching or whichever philanthropic person you come across, I give something for the charity. They all come under this category. Any charity, any form of charity, which anybody gives, be it qualified, unqualified, be it you give it to the person who deserves it or doesn't deserve it, doesn't matter. Krishna is saying the very fact that you are giving up something, that will actually qualify you, that will purify your mind, that will slowly elevate you, that will slowly bring you some knowledge, and with that knowledge you will start to associate, and slowly you will come to the process of Karma Yoga, and then you will climb up. That's what Krishna is saying. So technically 12.11, if you say, it wouldn't even count as a transcendental path, technically speaking. If you read the purport, you will see. Prabhupada is saying, if you read 12.11, towards the end, last 6 lines, Prabhupada says, in that respect, social service, community service, national service, sacrifice for one's country, etc. may be accepted so that someday one may come to the stage of pure devotional service of the Supreme Lord. That's why the tone which Prabhupada takes, the mood with which Prabhupada actually writes here will completely contrast to how you would have read in any other purport in any of Prabhupada's books. You will never see Prabhupada actually giving any sort of a credit to any of these. Prabhupada will always say it's material, it's finished whenever the body is finished. Prabhupada will always say these are all temporarily done on bodily level, how long can you blow the boil, so on and so forth. This particular verse, 12.11, Krishna is clearly throwing a net in which everyone can actually walk in. You don't have to be a Hare Krishna, you don't have to follow even path of transcendence, you don't have to be a spiritualist, you don't have to do nothing, you can be an atheist. Just give up your results. If you read the translation of 12.11, if, however, you are unable to work in this consciousness of me, then try to act giving up all the results of your work. That's all he's saying. He's not saying give it to me. He's not saying do it to for some Krishna consciousness. If he says that, then that comes under this category. Prabhupada says, project needs a capital, organization, so on and so forth. Then immediately it comes as yoga, it's connected. 12:11, it's not even, let alone Bhakti Yoga, it's not even connected to yoga. But Krishna is still accommodating. All right, take it. Now with that rope, Krishna says, forget it, you don't have to do nothing. He comes and he wraps it around his waist. Anybody can come. All you do is, don't carry any baggage with you. It's too heavy to lift. Just let go of things. That's what Krishna is saying here in 12:11. And then in 12:12, Hari Bol.
What do you mean by that self-situated?
Yep, I'll read the translation of each of the verses, then we'll come there. Okay, let's go from 12.8. Let's read the translation. So 12.8, it says, just fix your mind upon me, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We're just going to walk this one through again, just with the translation. Just fix your mind upon me, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and engage all your intelligence in me. Thus you will live in me always without a doubt. Now, this particular verse has a very great significance for Vaishnavas, especially Sri Vaishnavas. You would have come across Yamunacharya in some purports. Prabhupada actually quotes Yamunacharya's verses, Stotaratna, or his famous verse where he says, whenever I think of sexual pleasure, I spit at the thought. So that's Yamunacharya. Now Yamunacharya, when he was a child, he engages in a debate with one of the famous Digvijay Pandit. And then, by virtue of him defeating, he becomes a great king. One of the great Pandya rule. He takes half the kingdom and he becomes a king. His grandfather, his name is Nadamuni. He is also a great Vaishnav in Sri Sampradaya. Nadamuni. So what happens? Yamunacharya, his name was Alabandar. So then he becomes a king. He completely stops going to Gurukul because he's a king now. He accrues all these great skills, conquests his kingdom, and then practically a good portion of his life just goes in maintaining. Okay, he goes past mid-age, but still the training which he has actually taken in childhood days, it is yet to take effect, and he's completely engrossed in materialistic affairs. Now, Nadamuni, when he was in his deathbed, he thinks about Alabandar, who was a king at that point of time. He feels very sorry for him because Nadamuni's grandson is Alabandar, Yamunacharya. And Yamunacharya, in childhood days, he was a very, very attentive student, actually. He was a very, very good devotee. However, in the turn of events, he becomes a king, and then he gives up the path of Krishna consciousness completely. And then he goes towards materialistic pursuits. So the Nadamuni, in his deathbed, he actually has one of his disciples. His name is Ram Mishra. He gives the instruction to Ram Mishra that I'm about to leave my body. You please make sure that my grandson is brought back again to the path of Krishna consciousness. So he entrusts that instruction to Ram Mishra, and then he gives up his body. Now, Yamunacharya is a great king at that point of time. You can't just go and get an audience from the king directly, so easily. So now, Ram Mishra, what he does, all right. Best way to reach a person's heart is through the stomach. So he goes to the kitchen. Every single day when he goes to the kitchen, he will carry a very specific, very special type of spinach. It's called the Tudavala. It's still available in South India. It nourishes one's intelligence. It actually makes one very, very active, energetic, invigorated. So every single day he'll go to the cook and he will give him a bunch. He was trained in science of Ayurveda. He'll pick and then he'll give. And every single day the cook will make that preparation and give it to the king. King will eat. One day deliberately Ram Mishra doesn't go. He stopped going. So naturally the king becomes addicted by then, and he asks, why isn't that spinach today in my meal? Then the cook says, well, there is this person who's been offering this service very selflessly. I asked for any remuneration. He said he doesn't want anything. So he's the one who comes. Today he didn't come. So then the king actually tells him, okay, next time he comes, please bring him to me. So then finally Ram Mishra goes the next day, and then he was allowed to be given an audience, and then he goes to Yamunacharya, and then he introduces himself. By the way, Alabandar, oh great king, I am disciple of your grandfather, Nadamuni. He has entrusted with me a treasure which he asked me to give you. Now at that time, Yamunacharya as a king, he was preparing to wage a war on his conquest to expand his kingdom. Usually for any conquest, you need a lot of wealth. So Yamunacharya thinks, you couldn't have come at a better time. Please take me to the treasure. Bring it here. He says like, no, it's very huge. I can't take it. So you please take me there. So then he says, all right, I will take you. But because of the confidentiality that's involved in this, I want you to come alone. I don't want you to bring any of your army men, none of your bodyguards, just you and me. I'll take you. It'll take us 3 days. He says, all right. So as he starts walking, so they were going there. In the evening, they'll stay. Every evening, Ram Mishra would open Bhagavad Gita and he'll specifically read 12th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Every single day. First day when he actually heard, that was the time Yamunacharya heard Bhagavad Gita after his childhood Gurukul days. Then as he hears all these verses, especially about this most merciful nature of the Supreme Lord, tears start to roll down. And he thinks, what have I done? How I have wasted this life? Why did I actually do all of this? I tried something else. Because of Maya, I get distracted completely. What should I do now? So then they sleep there under a tree, wake up next day, keep going. Again, at the end of the day, when they sit down again, another second tree, they start to read. Second time when he actually reads this particular verse, Mai eva mana adatsva mai buddhim niveshayaha, when he hears that, he breaks down. And he crumbles and he falls at Ram Mishra's feet. And he says, alas, I have wasted my life. You have brought me this treasure. Please bring me back to Krishna consciousness. I'm really struggling. I'm deeply engrossed in this well of materialistic pursuits. So then Ram Mishra says, all right. So then they start to relish discussing Bhagavad Gita. And it keeps on going. At one point, Yamunacharya says, look, you gave me the greatest wealth. I don't need whatever treasure that be. We can go back. But Ram Mishra insists, no, you have to come because my spiritual master specifically told me to give you. So then he takes him finally and he takes him to Srirangam, Ranganath temple, and he shows the big deity of Ranganath and he says, this is the treasure. So Yamunacharya, when he reaches there, he never returns back. He then divides his kingdom into two, gives it to people. Half the kingdom, he actually writes it for the Srirangam temple, and then he just settles there. He becomes the greatest Acharya, actually. The Acharya after Yamunacharya is Ramanujacharya. So this 12.8 verse is a very important verse for many reasons, especially for Sri Vaishnavas. So this is fixing one's mind and consciousness. Okay, fixing one's mind and intelligence in service of Krishna. So this is the topmost. 12.9. My dear Arjuna, O winner of the wealth. What wealth is that? Wealth of Krishna consciousness. If you cannot fix your mind upon me without deviation, then follow the regulative principles of Bhakti Yoga, which is sadhana bhakti. Okay, what we are doing. Then follow the regulative principles of Bhakti Yoga. In this way, develop a desire to attain me. So our mind may not spontaneously go. Usually we have this problem. Sometimes we become overly analytical and sometimes we become overly emotional also. So there is always this push and pull between our emotions and our rational. When we become too emotional, then we become very, hot-headed. We don't know, we are driven by emotions, we don't think. Okay, rational takes the back seat, we just keep going, whatever our mind says. So when we are under the influence of the mind, then we tend to be more emotional. Whereas if we go too much into intelligence, again, we become overly critical. That makes us cold-hearted. Either hot-headed or cold-hearted. It's always hard. So maintaining that balance is very, very hard. So Krishna is saying, simply fix your intelligence in me. Simply fix your mind upon me. Which means Krishna is saying, don't get torn between your mind and intelligence, just to rise to the platform of the soul. Just understand that this world is temporary. No matter how much you try, you're not going to actually be able to take anything forward beyond a certain point. Just let it go. And be situated on the spiritual platform. Be happy in that platform. And then perform your duty as a devotee in that platform. And that way, you'll always be happy. So that's what Krishna is saying. So that's 12.8. 12.9, Krishna is saying, if you can't do that, then Krishna said, simply follow the practices of sadhana bhakti. If you can't do that, Krishna is saying in 12.10, if you cannot practice the regulations of bhakti yoga, this is 10, then just try to work for me, because by working for me, you will come to the perfect stage. So this is what we said. Karma yoga generally, both sakama and nishkama karma yoga. You can do any activity. It could be direct devotional service also, or any other activity in relation to Krishna. So we keep on doing that, and then eventually it will bring us. Now, interestingly, if you see, most of our lives, even as practicing devotees, it hovers between these three levels. Okay? Sometimes chanting we may do as a matter of duty. Sometimes rare occasion, we may actually feel completely drawn, especially when we have very, very painful difficulties. So naturally our mind will go towards Krishna, so then we go. Now we can understand why Kunti Maharani was actually praying. Let all these troubles come to me again and again. We can't imitate it, because even if we pray, Krishna knows we don't really mean it when we pray for that. So sometimes we may actually feel like that. Sometimes you come, you sit for a kirtan, same singer, same music instrument, everything, we'll feel our hands standing on end. Some other times we'll sleep also. We sleep even during kirtans many times. So same way, sometimes when we do devotional service, we really have to push on this platform only. Sometimes we may think like, no, I have to actually do, this is my duty. So our Krishna consciousness also hovers between these three especially. We have to be careful. And there is one more platform, 12. In these three platforms, but 12 is actually an extension of 10. So in these three platforms, but no matter what activity we do inside Krishna consciousness, we should always aim to come to 12.8. That's the ideal. Be it chanting, be it speaking, be it devotional service, be it anything. Whatever that you actually do, we should always aim to come to 12.8. That is the topmost. Wherein not only our gross body, but our subtle body also is going for Krishna. Usually, we are wherever our subtle body is, not necessarily our gross body. We may be sitting in the class, but your mind may be somewhere else. That's where you belong. That's where we belong. Okay, so we are wherever our subtle body is, not necessarily gross body. That is why if you see, one of the qualities which we will be studying of pure devotees is Aniketan. Niketan means Shantiniketan. Niketan means house. Aniketana means the devotees don't have any house. It doesn't mean they should not have any house, any mortgage, not in that sense. What it means is that Aniketan means no matter wherever devotees are, they are, because they have found this inner sanctuary in Krishna. They have found this shelter in Krishna, they will always carry everywhere. Generally, otherwise, you see, our tendency will be, even if you go for a devotional program, general devotee psychology, you go there and you will find, where are my mates? Even inside a devotional circle. How many of you have that experience? We go and we sit only there. And we suddenly even feel lost also in devotee sangha. Excuse me, that means we have to be demon, correct? How can we be lost in devotee association? But we carry with that baggage, which is fine, but that progress has to be there at some point of time, wherein we think beyond the bodily platform and we understand actually Krishna is the ultimate sanctuary. Otherwise, even in one-to-one devotee association also, we may be here, we may find enthusiastic. Class will finish in another half an hour. Okay, take prasad for another half an hour. After 12, we are alone. When we go home, it's more so. Nobody is there to monitor. Nobody is there to actually correct us. Nobody is there to guide us. We'll immediately feel lonely. One big questions we get asked. Sometimes you walk in, some new person comes to Krishna consciousness. I've overheard. Sometimes, people will say, that is brahmacharis. Then immediately, they are looking at you. So I also look at them without them looking at me. So in the corner, first thing they'll have is, are these guys really happy? Then that's the biggest question everyone have. Don't you feel lonely? We live in a family where there are 40, 50 people, all the time. 22 people here. How can we ever be lonely? We wish we can be lonely in the temple. We can never be lonely. It's not possible. But our mind says like that. Okay, we are lonely like that. But same way, but when we are coming devotee association, we practice it, we go home, or you go to a work, you suddenly go to a slightly unfavorable situation. Immediately loneliness hits us. Immediately we feel a mix of devotee and a demon. Sometimes we feel, as soon as we remove devotional clothes, we feel we are wearing another. How many of you have that experience? We feel that, now I have little liberty, We feel liberated when we remove the devotee clothes. We feel liberated when we put the beads. That's why I always say we seriously need to ask ourselves, are we devotee or are we demon? The problem is, we feel like that. We have all these arrangements and everything, but nevertheless, we always get torn between these two extremes. I was listening to one lecture, and the devotee was actually saying, whatever we were practicing before we came to Krishna consciousness, we quit when we came to Krishna consciousness. After coming to Krishna consciousness, now we take great pleasure in imitating that inside the realms of Krishna consciousness. We do that. And we take extreme pleasure. See, Krishna, I'm challenging you. So, and we have doubts, are we really envious of Krishna? So point is that this is the topmost platform, and that's what we should be aiming for all the time. Pure devotees, they are able to fix their mind on Krishna, so they are aniketana. Aniketana means they don't need any residence. Whole world is their residence. Okay, there is no confinement for their residence. That's what it means, aniketana. They have developed that inner sanctuary. Being in the association of devotees, developing that personal connection with Krishna. No matter what situation I'm going to be in, no matter where I'm placed, no matter which part of the world I'm in, no matter in what association I'm in, I'm going to be very chaste to my relationship with Krishna. That's what it means. So that's pure devotional platform. That's what we should be aiming for. So there is a spontaneous attraction towards running towards Krishna, towards serving Krishna. Otherwise, we can easily get disturbed, even inside Krishna consciousness. So, and 12.9 is, if we are not in that platform, which I said most of us aren't, so this is the way how we can cultivate slowly to come to that platform. Technically, these two are superior than 12.10 because these two involves mind. This one doesn't involve the mind at all, actually. Okay, so controlling the mind, more subtly you go, more advanced we are. So here, these two, this is spontaneously, or at least this is still in a sadhaka level to train the mind to go there. So these two are considered higher compared to the rest of the levels which Krishna gives. Okay, and then, so 12.10 Krishna says, work for me. So that one falls under Karma Yoga. So that's what Krishna says in 12.10. 12.11, if however you are unable to work in this consciousness of me, then try to act giving up all results of your work and try to be self-situated. Okay, so 12.11, it means Krishna says any form of activity you do, but just don't be attached to results. Generally, if you remember Nishkama Karma Yoga, we said it should have 3 attributes. You should work in knowledge, you should perform your activity as a matter of duty, and you should be detached from results. But in this one, Krishna is not talking about anything. Only Krishna is saying be detached from results, at least a little, just give. So Krishna is so merciful and he is allowing people to start somewhere. So even that is allowed. Next time you give a class, next time you come across a person who says he gives charity, you can actually, or him or her, you can show this verse. That's why this chapter is very important, especially for us as practicing devotees, how we deal with the people who are not in that practicing level, as well as those who are preachers. We need to know exactly how we can accommodate. If you bring a brand new person and you say, this is the platform you should be going for, nobody is going to go. It's very difficult. But this is one night that will cover practically everyone. Just a little piety, Krishna is happy to connect it straight away. Okay? Now 12.12. Mm-hmm.
What does he mean by that?
Yeah. Now, good question. If you read 12.8, 12.9, and 12.10, it will tell you what benefit you are going to get out of that. For example, you can work in, Krishna says in 12.9, if you read the 12.9 verse, translation. Yeah, louder, one of you. So that's the benefit. That's the result. In this way, develop a desire to serve. You understand? If you at least do regular to principle, you will come to a position wherein you will slowly start to develop the desire. That's the result. Likewise, you read 12.11. There won't be any result that's given. That's what he means when he says there is no result for 12.11. Read 12.11. That's all he's saying. He's saying self-situated. He's not saying how is it actually going to benefit you. That depends on the association which the person is going to take. That depends on how long that person will be able to do in that platform. If he's fortunate, he'll safe land. Otherwise, he can fall out also. Okay? So that's what it means, 12.11. Okay, 12.12. If you cannot take to this practice, then engage yourself in the cultivation of knowledge. Better than knowledge, however, is meditation. And better than meditation is renunciation of the fruits of action. For by such renunciation, one can attain peace. So technically, if you look at our whole process, it starts from Karma Yoga. Then it goes to Jnana Yoga. Then it goes to Dhyana Yoga. And then Bhakti Yoga. So this is the yoga ladder we actually saw. If you read this verse, as I said, there are 4-5 different interpretations you can take, and we can get confused also accordingly. If you cannot take to this practice, now when Prabhupada actually translates it, if you cannot take to this practice refers to Karma Yoga in verse 10. So the way how it is, so we have 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. If you can't do this, do this. If you can't do this, do this. If you can't do this, do this. It's not like if you can't do 11, do 12. 12 is an extension of 10. If you miss this point, this verse can actually go in circles. Okay? So if you can't do 8, do 9. If you can't do 9, do 10. If you can't do 10, at least do 11. That's what Krishna is saying. But then 10 and 12, they are just extension. So 10 is also speaking about Karma Yoga. 12 is also speaking about Karma Yoga. So when Krishna in this verse says, if you can't take to this practice, it means if you can't take to this practice of Karma Yoga, that's given in verse 10. As I said, this is not a transcendental path. So this is just an offshoot, so to speak. So the way to see this is, 11 is just an offshoot. This is not a spiritual path. It's not going to directly give any spiritual result either. This is just an inferior one compared to any other process because there is no connection to Krishna yet. Krishna is saying just to give up results. Who we are going to do, what kind of activity you do, who are you going to give results to, there is no mention of that. What benefit you are actually going to get, there is no mention of that. But at least it will get you started somewhere. So that is 11. So the actual hierarchy, let's finish before we come. So there's 8, 9. Then from 10, there is this offshoot. This is 11. Extension of 10 is 12. So Krishna is saying, so in 10, Krishna spoke about Karma Yoga. In 12, Krishna is saying, if you can't take up this practice, which is if you can't take Karma Yoga, then Krishna is saying, go for Jnana Yoga. Okay? If you can't cultivation of knowledge. If you can't cultivate knowledge, then Krishna is saying, at least do meditation. And he's saying, the Bhakti Yoga, that is the topmost of everything. That's what this verse means. So this verse actually speaks about only the same ladder. But when you take the word practice in verse 12 to be meaning the practice that's given in 11, it will confuse us. That's why we said 11 is just a simple offshoot. So the hierarchy is just this 8, 9, 10 and 12 only. Okay, 11 is just an offshoot, which is not a transcendental path. It's not a direct path either. Prabhupada explains that in 12th verse. It's not coming in any form of hierarchy whatsoever, nothing. It's just some form of charity. You just give up some form of sacrifice, some form of giving up results. Okay, Falatyaga. That is fine. Then that will actually slowly bring you. Because if you start to give up, Krishna says, slowly that will purify the mind, slowly it will give you knowledge, and then eventually once you come in devotee association, you will somehow get connected there. So that's what 11 means. So the hierarchy goes 8, 9, 10 and 12. So in 12, Krishna is saying, if you can't do this practice of Karma Yoga, then cultivate the knowledge. If you can't do that, then do meditation. Again, they're all inferior parts only, because the jnana and jnana actually is happening on a Brahman level. Usually that's how the yoga goes. If you see Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Dhyana Yoga, and Bhakti. In Karma Yoga, the person has no conception of the transcendental personality yet. All the person knows is, if I get attached to the result, it's going to give me trouble. So let me give it up. So usually there is no knowledge of the Supreme Lord. In Jnana, the person is actually in platform of Brahman. Technically, Jnana Yogis, they are in the platform. Dhyana Yogi or Ashtanga Yogi, they are in the platform of Paramatma realization. Bhakti Yogis, they are technically in Bhagavan realization. So Karma Yoga, there is no concept of direct connection there, but the person may or may not even know he is actually attached to Krishna. But somehow the results are attached to Krishna, so he still passes as yogi, but without knowledge. Yes, Mataji?
I was just saying, it's interesting in this verse how it's actually an ascending.
Yes.
Isn't it?
And
Although it's a bit confusing because he says in Sanskrit, if you cannot take this practice and go higher.
It's not higher. Remember the mercy rope. If you can't take this, take this. Doesn't mean 9 is greater than 8. It's like you chant 16 rounds. If you can't do 16, at least do 14. It's actually descending only.
No, but in that verse,
Yeah,
it's going from karma, then to dhyani, then to dhyana.
correct. Correct. The ladder is ascending, but the way how Krishna is saying is, okay, there are two different contexts. That's why I'm saying it's a slightly confusing verse. So this part is clear. I'll come to you. This part is clear, right? So each one of these processes, we go for a particular aspect of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, with the exception Karma Yoga. Person may not even have knowledge, but somehow his results are connected, so he still passes as a yogi. Now in this particular 12th verse, what Krishna is saying is, so 8, Krishna speaks about mind topmost. 9, he speaks about sadhana bhakti, no issues. 10, Krishna spoke about karma yoga. And then 11, as I said, it's just an offshoot there. Any form of sacrifice, fine. Now Krishna comes to 12. This 12 directly refers to 10. Okay, for a time being, because it's the offshoot, forget about 11. So see 12 as an extension of 10. So Krishna is saying, if you can't do karma yoga, then do at least cultivate knowledge. Because karma yoga, compared to doing an activity for Krishna, if it's such a big ask, Krishna is saying, all right, at least to do these inferior processes, just to sit and read, at least cultivate some knowledge. That's what Krishna is saying. It doesn't matter what you're doing with the results, at least read. That's what Krishna is saying. Here, the cultivation of knowledge refers to Brahmajnana. How can we say this is inferior? Because it's not about Bhagavan. That's why it's inferior. So Krishna is saying, if you can't do, then do this, which means this is inferior than this. That's what it means. This is easier than this. Yeah. So this is easier than this. That's what it means. Because here, Krishna is saying karma yoga, technically, if you see 8, 9 and 10, all these 3 directly puts one in touch with the Supreme Lord. It's a direct process. Okay, now Brahman and Brahmajnana and Paramatma Jnana, you can argue either way. It may be direct, it may be indirect. Somebody may go here, they may get stuck here. Whereas Karma Yoga, they won't go to Brahman or Paramatma. Initially they are without knowledge. Once they come in knowledge with Krishna, the pinnacle of Karma Yoga, it will directly put them in touch with Bhakti Yoga directly. Whereas someone goes, this is a slight detour. If somebody goes to Jnana Yoga, somebody goes to Dhyana Yoga, it's a detour. They can get stuck there. Rarely we come across a situation where somebody who's a Jnana Yogi, Dhyana Yogi, coming and becoming Bhakti Yogi, because they attain Siddhi and they get distracted completely. But Krishna is saying, start somewhere. Ideal is at least you do there. If you can't do, at least do Karma Yoga. If you find Karma Yoga difficult, Krishna already gave one option here, at least do charity. So this is one side, but if you want to still stick to the path of transcendence, at least the next level after Karma Yoga, Krishna is saying, at least develop some knowledge, do some meditation. That's what Krishna is saying. Okay? Now, in 12th verse, as I said, confusions ki jai. In the 12th verse, the last 2 lines is technically not part of the hierarchy. So if you see, technically Krishna finishes in first 2 lines of 12th verse, the hierarchy finished with Dhyana Yoga itself. Finally, Krishna is just giving a conclusive statement by saying, Falatyaga is actually greater than all of that, which means he's saying, rather than doing all of this, Krishna finally establishes again what he said in 8th. So it's like one single cycle. So the last verse, if you actually see, if you cannot take to this practice, then engage yourself in cultivation of knowledge. That's Jnana Yoga. Better than knowledge, however, is meditation. That's Dhyana Yoga, Krishna is saying. And better than meditation is renunciation of the fruits of action, which Krishna has actually touched upon in verse 10 itself, actually. So, as well as 9, Krishna is saying Madkarma, which is his devotional service, basically. So, that technically means Bhakti Yoga. So, the hierarchy for the 12, it starts from Karma Yoga. Krishna says, if you can't do this, at least cultivate knowledge. If you can't do this, at least do Dhyana Yoga. These 2 are inferior. Because this one has the potential. Krishna is counting that as something connected to him or potentially connecting to him. So in that context, this is more superior than these 2. Okay? So then this is Brahman and this is Paramatma, but this one, because it's connecting to Bhagavan, this is obviously topmost. And Krishna finally, in the last 2 lines of the 12th verse, he's giving the verdict. By the way, Bhakti Yoga is superior than all of them. That's what he's saying. Okay, so the last section, which is 13 to 20, Krishna touches on 35 different qualities which he gives. And as we discussed before, Of the 35 qualities, Shraddha, that takes precedence. In Ramayana, there is a story. When Lord Ram finishes killing Ravan, he goes back to Ayodhya. He gets coronated as the king. So for that festival, he invites everyone, including Vibhishan, including Ram, all the Rakshasas, some of them, some of his generals, all the Vanaras also. They all go to Ayodhya, they participate. At the end of the festival, one of the demon associates of Vibhishan, he says he wants to go back to Lanka. But he doesn't know, because from Lanka, they came through Pushpak Viman, a flying aircraft. It came to Ayodhya. Now only one demon wants to go back, but he doesn't know how to cross 800 miles in the waters. So then he asks Vibhishan. Vibhishan says, that's very simple. So he writes something on a scroll, and he gives him, just to hold this, it will allow you to walk on water. So he holds, and much to his surprise, it works. He just goes there, starts to put his feet on the water, he starts to float. And he keeps on walking. Halfway through, he gets curiosity. What's written in this simple scroll? So then he opens, and he sees name of Lord Ram written there. Now, the demon, he actually thinks, look at me, I'm this mighty demon, I'm so powerful, I've killed so many warriors, even in the war. Why should I just put so much faith on this little scroll? Look at me, I'm given up my qualities of chivalry and everything. I'm so fearful that I'm holding on to this one as a sentimentalist. So he just throws that away, thinking, I can cross on my own. As soon as he throws that away, he drowns. That's how the story goes, basically. So Shraddha, it always means there's always a gap between how much our intelligence goes to the actual magic, which actually happens in spiritual platform. Now, until we actually get to the point wherein we experience, we get realized knowledge, we need something, some sort of a bridge to be able to go. We were discussing this before also, in 3rd chapter also, how until we come to that platform, we will borrow the knowledge from the scriptures, borrow the knowledge, borrow the inspiration from Guru, borrow this inspiration, these skills, this information from other devotees. In that association, with that borrowed knowledge, we'll be able to do. Till how long? Until we come to a point wherein we realize it ourselves, and then somebody else may borrow from us. Okay? Knowledge, even if somebody borrows, we don't lose it. Okay? Knowledge can only multiply. If I know something, I teach somebody else, I'm not going to lose my knowledge. The other person is going to hold, I'm also going to hold the knowledge. Now, 2 people will actually understand the knowledge. Okay, so that's how it's going to work. So, point I'm saying is that this particular section, 13 to 20, Krishna highlights on a lot of qualities. Let us quickly skim through. 13 to 14. One who is not envious, who is a kind friend to all living entities. This is very important because Krishna is not saying, look, I'm going to focus only on ideal devotees. He's not going to say. Krishna is not even saying, I'm going to focus my attention and care only for devotees and not for demons. Krishna is not saying that either. All Krishna is actually saying is that be friendly to all the living entities. You can open that door. Krishna is saying, be friendly to all the living entities, be open, and then give this mercy freely out to everyone, each and every living entity in this world. That's what Krishna is saying. And that's the quality which Krishna wants us also to inculcate. As I said, without any extraneous endeavor, at least if we start to be favorable to those qualities, they will come to us soon. One who is not envious but is a kind friend to all living entities, who does not think himself a proprietor and free from false ego, who is equal in both happiness and distress, tolerant, satisfied, self-controlled, engaged in devotional service with determination, his mind and intelligence fixed on me. Such a devotee of mine is very dear to me. Same priya, ativa me priya. Krishna uses the word priya in practically every verse from 13 to 20. He by whom no one is put into difficulty, this is 15, who is not disturbed by anyone, who is equipoised in happiness and distress, fear and anxiety, is very dear to me. So Krishna goes on to list, and if you go to verse 20, those who follow this imperishable path of devotional service and who completely engage themselves with faith, making me the supreme goal, are very, very dear to me. So again, Krishna is touching on faith, the same thing which Krishna started in the 2nd verse also. So those who follow this imperishable path of devotional service and who completely engage themselves with faith, making me the supreme goal, are very, very dear to me. So this chapter can be summed up as progressive stages, as Krishna actually said, initially he established the supremacy of worshipping his personal form over worshipping impersonal form, impersonal path. One is easy, quick. The other one is difficult, troublesome, Krishna says. And then 8 to 12, Krishna gave about different progressive stages. That's where we spent most of our time today. That's the most important section of this chapter. So 8 is fixing our mind, intelligence on Krishna. If we can't do that, at least follow the devotional principles of sadhana bhakti. That's 9. If we can't do that, then at least do karma yoga. That karma yoga can be sakama karma yoga or nishkama karma yoga. Only difference between sakama and nishkama. So karma yoga. Nishkama karma yoga we know. The only difference between sakama karma yoga and nishkama is we didn't discuss much. Gita doesn't focus much on sakama. It focuses on nishkama just for completion. Sakama is also, it also follows the same attributes as nishkama. So one is there is knowledge. You do action as a matter of duty. Now third one, here we actually see this person is completely detached from results. Here also he is detached, but there is still some attachment to a portion of results. Some little attachment is there. It may not be fully, but little. So that's what differentiates Sakama from Nishkama Karma Yogi. So Krishna touches on verse in 12:10, when he says Karma Yogi, he means both. At least in one of the category you fall, no problem. As long as you are a Karma Yogi, Krishna is saying do that at least. 11, as I said, it's more like an offshoot, which says, even if we don't follow any of this transcendental path, at least start to give up on the results. Whether to qualified, unqualified, it doesn't matter. At least start to do. That will purify you and it will give you knowledge and you can climb up the ladder. And in 12, Krishna compares. If he says, if we can't even do Karma Yoga, Krishna says, at least develop some knowledge. If you can't do that, at least do some meditation. Meditation on knowledge which Krishna is speaking about is Brahmayana, knowledge about Brahman only. And then Krishna finally, he wraps up the 12:12, as I said, the 12th verse, last 2 lines, Krishna sums up, closes the loop saying, by the way, Bhakti Yoga. When he says Falatyaga, he means Bhakti Yoga there. Bhakti Yoga is the topmost. It is the easiest and it is the quickest, most powerful also among all of them. And then Krishna lists the 35 devotional qualities which endears one to Krishna. If we make some attempt to develop these qualities, if we make some attempt to inculcate this, then Krishna says we'll become very, very dear to him. We'll finish here. Any questions?
Which one has got some attachment?
Sakama Karma Yoga. Yogi. Okay. Any questions? Yes.
Why does Krishna then bring back somebody that we can talk to?
Yeah. Good question. Usually, when, let us say, we speak, sometimes I will say something, you will be hearing, but you don't know what I'm thinking now. You understand? So Krishna, when he actually speaks 10, 8 he spoke, 9 he spoke, 10 he spoke, 11 he spoke, and in 12 when Krishna mentions about practice, he is thinking 10. But we are thinking he is thinking 11. That's all. So Krishna, when he actually gives it in sequence, sometimes, let us say you ask me how to go from here to Parramatta. I actually say, all right, so go from here to Strathfield. And by the way, Strathfield is a junction. That's an offshoot information. It's not required as far as your knowledge is concerned, but I just say it. Before I come back and I say, and then you continue, keep going, and you'll reach Parramatta. 11 is more like that. So he's just giving something in between before he continues with that. Any other question? Okay. We have anything in Slido? Krishna? Not working. Okay. That one I need to do there. All right, we'll finish here.
श्रीमद् भागवत गीता की, श्री श्री राधा गोपीनाथ भगवान की, समवेद गौर भक्त वृंद की, जय निताय गौर प्रेमानंदे।
Hare Krishna.